Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art Juror panel. We're joined by three great past jurors right now, and they'll have a chance to introduce themselves in a second. I just want to introduce myself first. I'm Connor, a staff member at the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers, and I'm joined by a few other of my staff members if they want to say hello as well.
Hi.
Oh,
Go ahead,
I go
Fiona,
first.
please.
Oh, shoot. Sorry. Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm a programs assistant. I have my camera off right now, but you'll see me pop up in just a second. But I'll be monitoring the chat, collecting any questions that you guys have, and pitching them to the panelists later.
Thank you so much, Fiona. My name is Tendo Mutanda, and I'm the Deputy Director of Programs at the Alliance. I'm so glad to see all of you beautiful teens and perhaps educators here with us this evening, because we're joined by a really wonderful panel of art jurors who have been actively engaged in evaluating the work that has been elevated to the national level. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to pass it back to my colleague, Connor.
All right. And something we like to do to start things off is, I've seen it already a bit, but if you all want to chat where you're coming from in the US, it's always fun to see the different locations people are tuning in from. Or if you want to just say what type of art or work you're interested in submitting to the awards, it's always interesting to see what kids are creating. But some reminders before we get started. This event will be recorded and is currently being recorded right now and will be shared on our YouTube channel, which is at Scholastic Gold Key. So if you are curious, want to revisit this, or you know somebody who missed it and they want to see it, it will be up on our YouTube probably in a week or so after this event tonight. Closed captioning is also available if you should need it. And finally, if you have questions for the jurors, go ahead and don't put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A function, because that is what we will be drawing from later after they have a discussion to kind of field them questions. It's a lot easier for us to track them when they're put in the chat. All right. So before we get started, I'm going to do a quick about the Scholastic Awards to help, if there's anyone new here or anyone that needs some refresher on how the awards work, we can start with that before we get into the meat of the discussion. So the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards are open to teens in grades 7 to 12, ages 13 and up, who reside in the US, US territories, US military bases, and Canada. Students can submit art and writing of various different categories, and it's $10 for an individual entry and $30 for a portfolio entry, which are available to seniors. And our portfolios consist of 6 different works. They're all connected via theme or like inquiry. And if these entry fees present a difficulty, fee waivers are available to any students who might need them to otherwise submit. You can find out more at artandwriting.org. How to enter, you'll want to create an account at portal.artandwriting.org. We have a new portal system this year, so even if you're a returning student, you have to make a brand new account to get started again this year. Then following that, you'll want to upload your original work. We review all pieces digitally, so you'll be sending photographs of them to us through our portal system. And then you'll want to get a parent or guardian to complete a permission system, which is done through email, and then complete your payment or your fee waiver before the deadline, and it'll be submitted. And our deadlines begin as early as December 1st, but vary depending on your region. You can find out what region you're in by going to our website and going to artandwriting.org/region. And we have a little locator where you type in your school zip code and it finds the region you're in. Or on your dashboard, after you create an account, it should say what region you're in and what deadlines are associated. As a note, sometimes there are different regions for art and writing, so your deadlines might not be identical. So it's always something to want to pay attention to, because that can be a bit tricky. Here's our various categories for what type of works we accept, both in art and in writing. Again, art portfolio and writing portfolio are available to seniors only. It consists of 6 connected works, so they're submitted all at once. And then if you want any more explanations on what these categories are, such as examples on what we kind of use them the judge, or even requirements like how many photos can you enter or what's the word count for writing one, please go to our website, artandwriting.org, and it's, I think, artandwriting.org/how-to-enter/categories. There's also a categories button like on one of the main pages that you can use to find out more information on exactly what we're looking for with each of these categories. We also have some scholarship opportunities that I'd like to discuss really briefly. Works about grief and bereavement may be eligible for a $2,500 scholarship called the New York Life Award. Editorial cartoons may be eligible for a $2,000 scholarship with called the Her Block Award for editorial cartoon. And then again, art and writing portfolios, which are available to seniors only, may be considered for scholarships of up to $12,500. With some of these scholarships, like the editorial cartoon and the art and writing portfolios, those are categories you enter under, and then they're considered automatically. With things like the New York Life Award, when you're entering the piece, you have the option to like click for it to be considered for that award and enter a personal statement / answer a few questions. If you need any more information about those or other scholarship offerings, please visit artandwriting.org/scholarships. So now we get, I guess, a bit closer to our actual topic of award selection. Judges do not know the name, gender, race, or ethnicity of the artist or writer. It's a kind of a blind process where they don't get to see any of those details when picking works that are selected. And then we judge based on the core criteria of originality. So like, is this a surprise? Is this something new that we haven't seen before? Skill. And for skill, we don't just want to think about technical skill, which is important here, but also other skills like empathy or humor are things that come into play when we're asking judges to look at the piece. And then we finally look at emergence of a personal voice or vision. So does your piece sound like you? Does it talk about the things that you care about as a team, as a creator? Like, is it speaking from your heart and your mind? And that is my brief intro to the awards. Again, if you have any questions about this, you can pop them in their Q&A and we'll be monitoring them and trying to answer those. Or you can always contact us through our website. And welcome our 3 jurors. We have Eliot, Beowulf Sheehan, and Tyrone Brown-Osborne, who I will let introduce themselves because they'll do a much greater job than I will.
Yeah, thank you so much, Connor, for that table setting. First up, Autumn, if you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Autumn Eliot, and I am a 712 teacher in Box Elder, Montana, which is about 40 miles away from the Canadian border in central Montana. It is a Native American school, and we have some pretty great artists and students here, which is exciting. And I'm also the president of the Montana Art Education Association. And so teachers that are members of our organization group together, and we judged last year, and there was a lot of great works. So it was fun to see a bunch of different work from around the country.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Autumn. I'm probably going out of order from this slide that Connor just shared, but next up I have Tyrone.
Hi, so I'm Tyrone Brown-Osborne. I'm in New York. I'm currently a teacher at a middle school, progressive school in the East Village. In the West Village. Sorry, Beowulf. In the West Village. I've been a photographer for 30 years, but I also work with mixed media and video. I started out in photography thinking that I would move to film. I started out in advertising. And so I've photographed lots of celebrities and things like this and personal projects, the kind of work that takes you years to finish. And it's been great. And I've been judging Scholastic's works for 3 or 4 years, I think. So I'm always excited to see what young people are doing because I have a young person of my own and I teach young people.
Thank you so much. And Beowulf, if you could please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Beowulf Sheehan. I am a portrait photographer working largely in the arts humanities who resides on the other side of town from Tyrone. I'm in the East Village. I have been a full-time photographer for just shy of 20 years. I apprenticed and photographed and printed nights and weekends for 6 years prior to pulling the trigger and going for it. And it's been a really beautiful ride ever since. I have judged on behalf of the Scholastic Art Awards, I believe 3 times thus far, and really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And for all of the teens that are joining, you are just, you can't believe how fortunate you are to be in this situation, to just hear directly from just experts in the field. So thank you so much for joining us, panelists. And I'll just start off with a question about your journey or your experience in the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. And if you could think about the most outstanding piece of art that you've seen and what stood out to you and why it has stuck with you.
I'll go first. So last year was our first year judging, and so we really didn't know what to expect. And when we started judging, all of us, and most of the judges were Montana teachers, and we were just blown away of the caliber of artwork that was submitted. And we judged everything from architecture all the way to mixed media, watercolors. But I would say for me, the one that probably stood out the most was in the fashion designing category. There was some that they were amazing because they were completely original. I've never seen them before. Whereas some of the artwork, throughout, I was like, oh, I've seen that before. I've seen bits and pieces of that. Oh, they took that from maybe something. But the fashion designing, I just thought was amazing. There was a couple pieces that really stood out in that section.
Thank you for that, Autumn, Tyrone, and Beowulf.
I think it was the second year of serving as a juror in photography that I saw a piece that has yet to leave my mind. And what was so amazing about it was that it struck so well on those 3 criteria of originality, skill, and the emergence of personal voice or vision. I was shown a slide among hundreds and hundreds that we see every year we serve as jurors in photography that recalled something from almost a century ago and yet was completely original. I feel I should preface very quickly that in the field of photography, there's this immediate sense of thinking that everything's already been done because we're exposed just walking around our lives and engaging in society. We see, whether we are conscious of it or not, we see hundreds of photographs. And over our lifetimes, we see hundreds of thousands, if not millions of photographs. And there was this one image that was a beautiful black and white photograph of a pot and a plant on it. And the pot had eyes. And yet it wasn't a very quick fix digital composition. There was something so beautiful about it that made it look as if it was something made by Moholy Nagy or a member of the Dada artist movement back in the day. And it was just so very striking. And to see that there was this image that harkened back to something done a near century ago, yet was different from the work of that time, and was made by a young person and was singular of voice and was so beautiful and unexpected. It was refreshing to see something that powerful. It's very encouraging for me to have seen that photograph and thought, yeah, there's tremendous opportunity out there to engender a new voice in young people. So thank you for the chance to see that year.
Thank you. On the heels of our centennial, actually, as well. A great connection. Beowulf?
So I want to step back a second because I realize that we're talking to young people. So what may be familiar to me may be absolutely new to you. So I never think about whether I've seen the work or the kind of image before, or even if it's, yes, I never think about that. I think about how well one has executed the presentation of the image. It's the last thing, right? So if you're in a darkroom and you're making a print, you can make several prints. One of them is going to be better than the other. And then after you've made the print, you still have to frame it. And that framing is that presentation. When I think about work that stands out to me, it's the sense of it being finished. Almost like a product in a sense. Last year, I got to judge some of the writing, and amazing stuff, amazing writing by these young people, just gems. And there was a couple of poems that I screenshot because they were just phenomenal. I had to actually show adult friends of mine, like an 11th grader wrote this, amazing. And the poem was called Fatima. Just truly beautiful stuff. I think when you start this process, you're not supposed to know where you're going to end up. Often, if you're creating new work, and for you, I guess all of you, it's all going to be new work. So you're probably in the middle of your process. But when you submit it to us, for me, that sense that you have exhibited that piece, like that it's presented in that way. I think of one image that stands out to me, and clearly, it was a triptych, 3 images, and it was this architectural work, stark black and white on white, framed, and then photographed and submitted as a slide. I think it's that sense that you've, well, I guess I'm going to say it again, you finished the piece, that it's not simply looking at, snapshots of your vacation with your parents or something like that.
Great, thank you. So Connor touched on this earlier, but we do have 3 criteria that judges are tasked, like the lens through which judges are tasked to evaluate the entries that are presented. They are originality and skill. And Connor touched upon the fact that skill is not simply technical skill. It might also be emotional intelligence. It might be adaptability. How were they able to use a common household object so that it mirrors how a canvas or something like that? Or so there are different types of skill that we're talking about. Empathy, for example, and then emergency of a personal voice or vision. These criteria have withstood the test of time. And for us, that means the last 100 years. So what does it mean for you when you're, and I think you all have touched upon this already, but if you could just go a little bit deeper, how you apply these criteria to the selection of works that advance in the judging process.
Well, I'll answer that. I don't think it's that we take these 3 criteria and apply them to the work, but rather the work speaks to, at least to me. And in it speaking to me or not speaking to me, it then says 1, 2, 3. Among those 3, it then meets it. I let the work respond rather than my seeking out, okay, I'm not going to acknowledge this work in a certain way because I'm staying within these 3 lanes to which I'm confined as a juror. And then once I see the work, if it resonates with me, then I'll judge it across the 3 criteria.
Yeah, that's kind of what I agree with you. You could tell when we were in our jury selection, you could tell on the screen the juror's face, because we did it completely digital because Montana is such a big state that we couldn't get together. And you could tell that when a piece popped up and it was powerful and it was well done, you could just tell in everybody's faces. You just knew that one resonated with everybody. And then we went back and discussed those 3 kind of requirements that we to look at. So that's kind of how we did it.
Yeah, you know, I think about this in terms of the medium. If you're shooting photography, are you shooting digital or analog? And there are ways to present that work in which it clearly says it's an analog image. There are ways to think about creating your digital images and ways of presenting them. I often think that one of the things that would be useful is to take advantage of the fact that digital images are easily manipulated on a computer in Photoshop. There are things that I expect of a digital image in a way that I don't analog image. I expect that you're playing with Photoshop or Illustrator. I expect that you're layering different things into your image. It's a whole world unto itself. I think when you start to consider your subject matter, your medium, then something original happens with it. But it only happens if you're playing. You have to play, and you have to make mistakes, which are really, really great. Like I was developing film of my students this week, and they totally didn't mean to do what they did in some of those images, but they're brilliant. And then now I have to go back to them and explain to them why this mistake actually looks fantastic, you know. But all of that is about really playing. And I think, and not just playing in the sense of, you know, being silly, but playing with, like, you know, a darkroom, lenses, papers, toning, cyanotype printing, Photoshop, Illustrator, all of this stuff that you could do. One of the glories of being in New York City is you can see endless great artwork all the time. And you need to go see endless great artwork. And if you're somewhere in the country where that's not possible, it's all on the internet. I mean, you really should be looking. Part of your job is to constantly be looking.
Thank you for that. That's a perfect segue into the next question. You've talked about just being inquisitive in nature and looking for good artwork as references. So that ties into the next question. What do you think about or advise students other than that, or maybe digging in deeper into that, to think about when they're selecting works to enter into the awards?
I think please, you can go ahead. Sorry. Sorry, Tyrone.
So quickly, I think your strongest work will probably come from a series as opposed to one-offs. Now, you might be a street photographer and have your camera every day, and there's just this amazing image you have. But I think when we go in to look at work, sometimes we can tell if someone submitted multiple images because it resonates the work. I think if you're working on a particular project, pulling from that project, asking yourself, which images are the strongest, which tell the story with the fewest amount of images necessary. I think somewhere in there, you start to get to your best work. And then and how many different types of artwork are you doing? And then pulling from those bits of work, you can make a submission that probably will stand out in a way that someone says, that's a process going on. That's someone working through something. Yeah.
Thank you.
My thoughts from there, Tyrone, are, I think as a young person, you're beginning to ask the question that we ask of ourselves our entire lives. And as we move along in our journeys of life, we get better at answering that question, which is actually twofold. Who am I? And what am I here to say? You have the gift of being on this beautiful planet. And what are you going to do with your time on it? And hopefully, and I know this question was posted in the chat as to whether or not this talk is applicable to writers, but I think what we're discussing is very much applicable to artists of any medium, because a writer, as well as a visual artist or a performer, is essentially saying on the page, on the stage, on the canvas, on that digital or analog medium of photography, whatever the medium might be, this is who I am. So you make this body of work, and then you take the time to reflect upon it, and you find those photographs that resonate, or those works that resonate with you, that story that resonates with you. Because I'm about to put myself out to the people I might never have the chance to meet. I'm about to be, quote unquote, judged. And I just want people to see my voice, which is, of course, one of the three criterion. And then the others, of course, come into play to the end of how well are you telling that story of, this is me, and this is what I have to say, and here's how I'm saying it.
And just to add to theirs, you guys did great. Those are awesome. Like Tyrone said, don't be scared to make mistakes. When we do batiks, my kids freak out when they get one little drop of wax and they're like, oh, it's wrecked. And I'm like, no, let's work that into the composition. And a lot of times that little dot could disappear once you do the crackling effect and all of that. And I'm like, don't be scared to make mistakes and experiment, grow from your mistakes. And as judges, we may see your mistake, but sometimes we don't, and it just blends in and it just makes you a better artist.
And that could be the one thing for which you'll ultimately be known. That one little mistake becomes your signature.
So thinking about the fact that the eligible participants are teens, what feedback or what words of encouragement do you have to offer to those who may be insecure or nervous about using their authentic voice, knowing that their work is going to be judged and viewed by people that they do not necessarily know that are from other, like, so perfect example, Autumn, you're all the way in Montana, right? So it could be judged by someone who's as far away as Montana. That might be a scary proposition from someone who might be just in New York or Florida, for example. So what words of encouragement or advice can you offer to these teens as to using their authentic voice, and possibly and after they leverage their authentic voice and win, the proposition that it might be, it will be attached to their actual name?
I would say I tell my kids, don't be scared to be judged, especially with Scholastic, because as a judge, we don't know your identity at all. So you should not have any worries about our judging. And then also, as an artist and a student, you got to learn to take criticism and build from that criticism. Don't take it to heart and be like, oh, they hated my work, or build from it and learn from it. So I wouldn't be scared. I mean, we don't know who you are, so send it in.
I have yet to photograph a person who wasn't nervous on some level inside. And I've worked with people decades older than me. I photographed 3 US presidents, people from 50 plus countries. Being nervous means something exciting is about to happen. And that excitement is building within you. It's okay to be insecure. It's okay to be nervous, because that's true of all of us. I might be a little nervous right now, just as I speak to you. It's part of being a human being. It's all good. It's welcome. It's a way to build empathy, because we're nervous too.
Yeah, I think this process is totally anonymous. We don't know whose work we're looking at. We don't know whose work we're reading. I would say this: there are 8 billion people on the planet. There is a spot for everyone. Your work will have an audience. But what I would like to say, especially when I look at the photographs, I've looked at other artwork, other mediums. I think it's true, especially when you're young and you don't have the means to go off and just do things, that your subject matter, your best subject matter. I remember, and I'm 53 now, I remember buying my first camera at 2018. And the best subject matter was right in front of me. It was my friends. It was the world of people I knew. And just looking for what was really unique in each one of these people who I'd spend years with. You don't have to go halfway around the world to do something exciting. It's probably right around your corner, right in your neighborhood.
Thank you. And I am affording you all the opportunity to, from your perspective, and teams, you have to understand who you are as artists and process these do's and don'ts. So any do's and don'ts as far as entries. Just for the teams to know, on the art side, photography is the category that is the most popular, not by thousands, but by tens of thousands of entries, because it's so accessible. But there are obviously other categories that you may submit work to. And so some of the feedback from the jurors might be specifically related to photography or in general to all categories. So, and I'm just giving you guys time to tee up your do's and don'ts, but please, jurors, if you could offer some do's and don'ts to our teams before we open up the session to questions.
I'll echo Tyrone's statements to do a great job of editing yourself and to feel comfortable in taking risks.
You know, I want to say this. I'm sorry.
Please. I was just only going to say that I still make mistakes on every single commission. I'll do something wrong, and I will every day. I get another opportunity, and that is more than fine. So feel free to make those mistakes. Do this without any self-imposed pressure. Do it with self-imposed pleasure. Have fun out there. Make art you love, and then share that love.
So I wanted to say something to say the people who are not photographers. At the end of the day, if you're not submitting writing, your artwork has to be photographed. You can't get away from it. We have to see it in some way. Let me say what's really important as a photographer. If you're submitting sculpture, right? Your lighting, the light that you have on that work is equally as important in terms of the way we understand seeing it. Because if you have shadows running across the the portrait face of your sculpture and it's clay, and we can't make out what the details are. How can I say this? Because this is actually a class in itself. Your presentation of your final piece is as important in terms of how you think about presenting it. Even if it's say performance and you're being videotaped, again, lighting, like all of this is just so fundamentally important. You can't get away from it. So it's not even a question if you're a photographer. It's a question of presentation. That sense that the item is finished, that you put your nice, beautiful oval abstract sculpture against a gray wall, and you have diffused lighting, and you use the right lens. And I mean, all of this nonsense is actually really important. We actually take all of it to heart, because the person who gets it right from the person who doesn't get it right are worlds apart.
And that you just read my mind. So on my list here, you probably can't see it, but the very first one is good photos. There were so many sculptures and clay pieces where this was the background. And so you're trying to look at this sculpture and you have all of this going on in the background. And it was very distracting. Lighting is a big one. And then some of them, more than one picture, because with just one photo of a really cool abstract sculpture, we need to see all the different angles and the detail. Do some zoom in. That was probably the biggest one that all of us Montana teachers were like, oh, we need better photos. And some of them you wanted to see more photos, and then there wasn't enough. And I know that your schools, there's got to be somebody that, you know, is fairly good or really good at taking photos. Ask your art teacher. Find a photographer in your community. I'm sure they'd be willing to help you, you know, take really good photos.
Autumn, I'm just gonna actually ask if you could just dig into that a little bit more, because we've introduced a new entry portal which requires students to upload different vantage points of 3D works. And so can you just provide a little bit more guidance as to what you would recommend that the vantage points be for 3D works?
Well, there was one that was last year, and it was just one straight on view. And it had a lot of very intricate drawing and carving into it. So if you had the front view, maybe a 3/4 view, maybe looking more towards the bottom up, do the worm's eye view, bird's eye view, and then zoom in on that detail work, because sometimes that detail work is the most beautiful part of the whole piece. And if it's just zoomed out and we can't really tell what that is, it kind of loses some of that. So I'm not a true photographer. I do stained glass. But I just know that from what we saw last year, I know multiple photos would help a lot in the sculpture and ceramics.
If you have a piece that has significant dimension to it or depth to it, we need to see the texture of it, and that those types of qualities. And the ability to see that is augmented or complemented by having at least one light source coming from some degree of, say, perpendicular to the flat side of that work when putting your lights around that image, or that piece rather.
Okay, thank you to all of you for providing that great insight as to your experiences as jurors, what you're looking for, what stands out. And I hope that this is going to be very valuable to the teens who are have joined us, who might be a little bit nervous about entering and may have not even had a clue as to where to begin as far as participating. So I want to switch gears a little bit. We're getting ready to field some of the inquiries that have landed in the Q&A. So my colleagues Connor and Fiona have been monitoring the Q&A box. And Connor, if you want to kick us off with some questions for our esteemed panelists.
Yeah, of course. I'll go with the kind of theme we were just talking about, and maybe Tyrone or Autumn, you can speak more about it. But someone was asking, what type of light do you recommend to photograph pieces like sculptures or ceramics?
Go ahead, Tyrone. That's your area.
So you want diffuse lighting. Diffuse lighting is okay. So imagine I have a lamp and there's a light bulb and it's pointed at my face. That's direct lighting. You don't want that. Usually creates shadows unless you know what you're doing and your piece is created to have that effect. But in general, you would take that same lamp, that same light bulb with the cone, and you would aim it towards the roof, and then it will diffuse and be even flat lighting on all sides of your piece. That would be the basic.
Agreed. Anything that has 3 dimensions, of course, when photographed, it flattens down to 2. So you want to try to light in such a way that you're still able to maintain dimension to some end. So diffuse light I use all the time, and I'm still able to give my subjects dimension, but I try to never have it in the same plane as the key of the subject. In other words, if this is my subject's face, my light is not coming from here. I'm able to give depth and dimension to the subject by moving my light around that person, something other than 90 degrees opposite that person. And that would be true of any 3-dimensional work, if not person, to have the light keyed from one side, not immediately opposite the subject, but askew from it. I hope that makes sense to everybody.
That was super interesting. Thank you. Another question. We've got this one a few times, but what things stand out in like a gold key or like a gold medal art piece as compared to like a silver?
You know, that's an interesting question because I kept thinking, like, in many ways, it's the judging process is a process of elimination. Like, I see things that I would say were gold keys just from jump. Like, wow, that's just amazing. It really is a process of elimination where we're whittling down to the top 250, the top 100, the top 50. It's not a question that you can give a straight answer towards. It's, again, to me, I think things that take away from it becoming say a gold key. Like there were some particular photographs that I was looking at the last time I was judging, and they were clearly analog photographs, but you know, the person needed to spot some of the photograph. Now, if you don't know what spotting is, it's when you're printing and you have like some area of the photograph where there's no tonality and you need to add color to it or tone to it to make it even. Things like that. Or say your slide had your image and it was like this, you know, that takes away from that thing that I'm saying about it being a sense of it being finished. I think if you want to have, here's the thing, you want to know what looks really good in terms of finished, go to a bookstore and look at some art books. The art books have excellent presentations and designs and layouts. I mean, from everything from sculpture to God knows dance. You can get a sense of what that is.
Those are all excellent thoughts, Tyrone. I look forward to co-judging with you one year. We should say, everyone, we haven't judged yet, but I can see us getting a lot of fun fights along the way. I think among the three criteria, skill is the floor, if you will, and then the other two are the ceiling. And I'm really struck by pieces that reach for the ceiling. And at the same time, as you make the work, I don't think your mindset should be, okay, well, I've mastered certain floor necessities, so to speak, in the art form in which I'm working and soon to apply for a key. But rather, is this just the best me, as I've spoken to earlier? I really love the idea of not worrying about certain things, but just giving your all, giving of yourself to this. Just as if you get a homework assignment, you do the homework assignment because you have to, but every once in a while you do this assignment because you can't wait to do it. You're excited about it. You're impassioned to tell that story in whatever art form it is. That's the stuff that's really going to speak to me. If I can see your passion for what it is you're saying in the piece, great chance of getting a key.
Yeah, we had a lot of very heated discussions in our sessions. And I totally agree with both of you. A lot of ones that made it to gold key for us wasn't the skill. It was, did it tell a story? And was it a powerful story? So sometimes somebody with less artistic skill, maybe in charcoal or drawing, made it to the gold key because as soon as you looked at their picture, you knew the story and it was impactful.
That's interesting that you say that, because now that I listened to the two of you, I think I love that the analogy of the floor and the ceiling. That's really sweet. I'm gonna borrow that one. There is this sense from, I think, people who have been engaged in artistic practice for years and decades, in my sense, that every once in a while you see a piece and you tell yourself this story because you can see that student is reaching towards that ceiling, and you know that they don't even know how powerful their work or their voice will be in the next 4 or 5 years. And sometimes we get to see that. I think that's what Beowulf was referring to when he said the ceiling, because I do get that sense when I judge some of these art pieces, and definitely in judging the writing part, the poetry and journalism part. Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal writing. Stuff where like, oh, I can't wait till you're like 30. You're going to be this amazing writer. Like, I mean, just phenomenal, the stuff that these 11th graders and 12th graders were writing. Just amazing.
And at 30, you haven't reached the ceiling yet.
No.
Yeah. Of course, the secret is that there is no ceiling. It's just growing deeper and wider in that circle of love you're building in the art form that you practice.
Yep.
Right, thank you guys. I do want to ping off something you said, Beowulf, about assignments, because we do get a lot of entries that are completed as part of classroom assignments from teachers. I guess, like, how do you, can you tell this when judging, and how do you differentiate ones that like rise above and reach for the ceiling as opposed to those that are just like an assignment that someone completed?
Well, in judging over time, in the course of a single day of judging, or multiple days of judging, we'll see certain themes arise. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people love their pets. A lot of people love sunsets. A lot of students love flowers, reflections of water on the street, and that's all fine. But those are stories that have been told 1,000 times over and will be told again. So of course, I'm looking for that singular voice. That is one of the 3 criteria to meet. And so, yes, I've certainly photographed reflections. At some point, I've photographed a pet, I'm sure. But we all have, because we've been on Earth long enough to have done these things. It's part of being a human being in this time in history to document these things. But of course, finding your own way in whatever it is you feel compelled to say, that's where the excitement comes in for us. And that's a self-assignment that you're going to give to yourself your entire life. And hopefully other people fall in love with whatever it is you have to say. And that's how you grow and build a career as an artist.
And I would say go above and beyond. And I noticed last year, like in the printmaking, you could tell that a teacher, you know, submitted the class's work because it was the exact, I mean, they were just copy, 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 copy. And so a lot of those were just automatically thrown out. But then you got this one that you knew was from that class because it was a jelly plate assignment. But they went above and beyond. They were excited so you could kind of tell the other kids are like, me, jelly prints, put some ink, you know, and this other one just did layer after layer and color schemes. And so, you know, that one got to move on. So if you're doing a class assignment, if you put more work into it, it's probably going to move on quicker than your classmates.
Thank you guys. This one is vaguely related to what you just talked about with, you know, topics that might be overdone, like a sunset or a dog or a reflection. But we have a question about not only what topics are like overdone or something that students might want to avoid, but do you have any pet peeves that you see, like things that irk you as an art judge or writing or poetry?
No. I've lived long enough to know that even things that I don't like can be done amazingly well. And I have a tremendous respect for respecting things that I actually don't like. I like getting out of my comfort zone. So no pet peeves. But you know, if you're going to photograph a sunset, why don't you photograph a sunset over the course of a year and put it in Photoshop and do a poster that's like 365 sunsets? Give me something different. You know, that's what the digital medium affords you to do. You can do a project over time, and then I look at it and I go, wow, this person, that's one sunset, but this person decided to, over the course of a year, they're going to take sunsets every day. I'm there. I'm right there with you. I'm probably going to be, yeah, like, wow, that kid's thinking. You know, I like that. Or, you know, you're going to take a portrait. Well, you know, you could probably take a portrait in, I don't know, 36 frames. One roll of film. Your contact sheet is your print, is your final image. I mean, as a teacher, I love it. And I work at this school that there's really nothing we can't afford to do. So I do everything that I've ever wanted to do that I don't have time. So my students are constantly doing these projects that are just, I don't even see the kinds of things that I have my students do in submissions. So there's a lot out there that can be done, but you just have to keep playing. And even the simplest idea can be made really rich if you look at it enough, if you think about it enough.
Yeah. To echo Tyrone, photography is not just click. If it was, there wouldn't be, I believe, people who would be able to carry this as a profession, because then what compounds the click is, of course, how you shape light, how you add light, how you take away light, and what is happening, of course, beyond the technical and the image. Where are you in that story? Because anyone can say click, and we want you, students. We want your voice in that work, whatever the work is, whatever the subject matter is. As Tyrone had alluded, it could be 1001 sunsets. That's great, but we all want to see you among those sunsets.
And I would say, not artistic wise, but one of the pet peeves that we had judging is, and I haven't done it on the back end, so I'm not quite sure, but making sure that you're in the right category. We had multiple watercolors that were gorgeous, and they were in the acrylic category, or they were in, we had one that we got a pencil drawing in photography. I'm like, how did that get in there? So make sure when you're filling out your form that you click the right button. And if you're not sure, does this go in mixed media or does this go in the oils? That you ask somebody, don't just assume. Because I mean, we had this, I mean, we all just stood there and look, I mean, it would have got gold as a pencil drawing, but it was in photography. So it's like wrong category. So just be really careful when you fill that form out.
This year we had a few submissions in photography that were clearly better suited for digital art. And there is a difference.
Yeah, we recommend as well that students check out not only our category guidelines on the website, but additionally our gallery of awarded work, so they can see kind of what is typically awarded in each category if they are looking for more examples. But thank you guys. I think Fiona's going to ask the next question.
Yeah, a lot of people are curious about like what the judging process looks like on your end. So things like, do you have any sense when you look at someone's art, do you know if they've submitted other pieces? Is there a process? Like, do multiple judges look at the same piece of art? Like, what is it like for you to receive something and judge it?
We all see the same pieces. In photography, we see the same pieces at the same time. And over time, we'll know if it's part of a larger submission because the story repeats itself. And that gets back to what Tyrone had spoken earlier, to the end of editing your work, finding that best single image that says, this is me and this is what I have to say.
I'm just going to interject momentarily, just to assure all students that art entries are judged by a panel of 3 jurors. And so there are 3 jurors assembled in a room looking at viewing a projected image of your work. And so a lot of the comments that were, a lot of the feedback that was offered earlier about the quality of the images that you submit are related to the viewing conditions of how your work is judged. So I'll leave it at that. But there are 3 jurors in a room together or virtually viewing your work. And then please continue. Sorry, I just wanted to like do that table setting.
Yeah, so in Montana, we did ours virtually. So I was always the moderator. So I was the one that ran the controls and went through the process. So my 3 jurors, we just made little cards, and they would look at the work, and then they would either throw up a card that would say yes, no, and then I would, click the button and move on to the next image. And then usually the first round was pretty simple, going through, moving on. The hardest round was the silver round, moving them on to the gold key. That's where we had some duke out matches between us. So, and it was, yeah, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of conversations, and it's a really good experience. So as students, when you do graduate, I would recommend becoming a judge.
All right, we have a fun question about photography. Someone's asking if they can submit using photos taken from their cell phone, and I'll ask if you have any like advice for people who are trying to use like that method for capturing an image.
It's interesting because I'm at Beowulf, you probably know, the International Center of Photography. So that's where I'm sitting at now. And I've been associated with this place for, I don't know, almost 27 years. I actually worked for a teacher whose class was all about cell phone photography. Now, I would say yes. Not that I'm ever going to shoot anything with my cell phone and take it seriously, but that's me. But the quality of cell phones, the lenses, the software that comes with it, you can do good work. In fact, I'm lying. I'm actually doing a project where I'm photographing myself 1 photo a day for a year on my cell phone. And I'll be playing with it in Photoshop later. But yes, I think you can do really interesting creative work with the cell phone. I think the basics about composition and lighting, all of these things stay the same. Whether your cell phone looks like like a Zeiss lens and it's super crispy, or whether your cell phone makes your images look like a point and shoot plastic camera. I mean, all of these are considerations about subject and the equipment that you use for that particular subject. So yes, absolutely.
I'll say that I have yet to come across a camera that makes a picture. No camera has ever made a photograph. The camera is a tool we use as human beings to make photographs. No one has ever, to my knowledge, ever gone to a writer, to a poet and said, that was such a beautiful story. What laptop did you use? or what pen did you hold in your hand as you wrote it down? It's the same thought process. It's never the tool, it's how you use it.
Mhm.
When the pandemic began, I found myself unable, like all of us, of course, to be in front of another human being for a while. And in a few months' time, I was then asked to make photographs of people remotely, photographing people from a cell phone, through a cell phone, learning to light in an environment where my body isn't present, and moving forward from there. And that became a fair part of my work for a while. Nothing's impossible. Just let your creativity run with it, and then choose the tools you wish with which to tell that story.
All right. How about a question about process? Do you all have any techniques or tips you use for brainstorming or getting out of a rut creatively?
Go for a walk in a neighborhood you don't know.
Do
I used
something
to go for, oh, sorry. I just used to go for a drive in the mountains.
Yeah, I guess I would go for a run, but I guess what I would say is just do something other than the thing that you're worried about. And you can come back to it later. You know, you can put it down.
And
Unless
going for a walk. Sorry, go ahead, Tyrone. Sorry.
unless it's a deadline. But
right. And going for a walk in a neighborhood you don't know means the same thing as picking up a book by an author you've never read before. Seeing a film by someone whose work you've never seen before, taking in a series on television, whatever the story is, if it's your own with your feet underneath you, guiding you through it, or someone else's story that you've yet to discover, take that walk.
I'm sorry, there was a question I wanted to address. I looked in the Q&A for a second, and I guess someone's an animator out there, and so they asked whether it was more important. What was more important? Was it the story, or is it the animation? And I would say if you can make them both strong, then that's great. But I think you know, when you start looking at moving images, there's so much to start to think about. Like I do this film studies thing, and there are films that, yeah, the execution isn't great, but the writing is just fantastic. I don't think anyone can walk away looking at a medium that uses moving image and sound without having to think about both of those aspects. So sometimes the story is driven by what's written, and sometimes the story is driven by what's displayed on the screen. There's one thing I remember when I first started making short films is someone told me, you can have bad imagery, but you can't have bad sound.
All right, thank you for answering that one and looking in the Q&A box. We have another question here. a bit, it's kind of personal, I guess, but what did you decide to like, what made you decide to go down the art path that you followed? And what, I guess, do you wish you knew when you were a teen that you know now?
If you're attending this panel, I would imagine that there's already a little voice speaking to you inside you. Embrace it and be patient with it. Be kind to it. Give yourself time. It's taken me my lifetime to get to where I am. And yet there are things that I did as a young person, reading, writing, drawing the stories in books I read as a child because I didn't want to wait for that next issue of the comic book or the next book in that series to be published years later. Because I was still in love with the story and the storyteller. And now I'm a big kid celebrating storytellers. And instead of it being Spider-Man and Batman, my superheroes, of course, are those authors. It's been a long journey just to come back to myself. So you're beginning to learn who you are and speaking to who you are through your art. Don't deny the conversation, embrace it. And let other people join in with it.
That is so crazy. You know, I always wanted to be a writer. And I ended up a visual artist. Like I so resonated with what you said about like you now take the images of those people who write those stories that you love to read. Young people, whoever you're going to be, it's already there with you. You're going to be revisiting the themes of yourself throughout your entire life. I know for me, I didn't know I would be a visual artist, but I actually, I live in a big city where a lot of stuff happens. And one day someone ran into me on the street and just said, I want to do this thing with you. And that turned into 10 years of working in advertising, which then led me to the idea that, well, you know, I have access to all these people. I want to tell stories. I've always wanted to tell stories. And I just happened to pick up a camera and I knew a bunch of people and I got to start to tell some stories. Yeah, you have to put yourself in the place where the world will open up to your passions, your bliss. It is there. Do not believe it's not there. It is absolutely there. You might have to move. You might have to wait, but you always need to work because the opportunity will present itself. And I was a young cat. In fact, I actually just got a book where I'm in the book from the guy who got me started on this journey 30 years ago. Yeah, there's someone in this world waiting to discover who you are.
And Tyrone said it really well, what I tell my students at my school is never stop learning and don't be afraid to try something new. My husband gets mad at me. I've had 11 different jobs and I've tried everything. I went to school first for architectural drafting. I worked at an architect firm. Then I went to graphic design. I've worked in stained glass studios. I mean, I've done, waitressing. So try everything and then you will land on what you love. And, becoming a teacher probably was the best thing that I ever did. Getting to share my love and passion for art with the students that I teach is great. And any of you out there that want to become a art teacher, I can tell you right now, Montana has like 62 job openings, so come on over.
Wow, I'm coming back to echoing both your sentiments, just to the end of staying in love and growing in that love. And not everyone's going to love what it is you have to say. Tyrone had said so very eloquently that no matter the medium, you are a storyteller. And not every story is going to be accepted. And that's okay. If it was accepted by everybody, you might be trying to become a politician and not an artist. You don't have to worry about other people's approval. You have to make sure that you're happy with yourself, and people will join you in that journey as you grow. Dr. Seuss was rejected by his first 20 plus publishers to whom he petitioned his work. And it took that, I can't remember the exact number, 21st, 22nd person and say yes. And what wonderful things happened after that yes finally came. But years of being told no is something you all will have to go through as an artist. I certainly did. And then the yeses come. But you do this for yourself first. So you have that first most important yes, you. Everything else falls in place over time. Just stay and grow in love.
What you'll discover is that it's so, I don't know, I don't even call myself an artist, but the practice of doing and creating and reflecting, it's not, your life becomes the art. You know, you end up living it in such a way where it's just brushing your teeth, you're creating something in your head, you're about to go do something, you're about to meet someone, and you're going to produce this thing. It's a blessing, really. It's just really a blessing to be able to live, to create, or to teach about how to create, which is basically teaching how to liberate your mind from constructs.
Man, y'all are making me want to get open a Word document and start creating. But I have another question from a student. What do you recommend for someone who either like loses interest in their like current art project really quickly, or always has like 1,000 ideas running through their heads and just can't figure out which one to focus on? Do you have any have you seen any students like that? Do you have any hints for stuff like that? Has it happened to you?
Do them all.
You know what? Here's what I'm thinking about a student, and she's really lovely student. She likes to please her teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, doing your work is one thing, and you should do your work, and hopefully you love school. I did. You need to go please yourself. You need to go do that thing that excites you. My student would be a much better image maker. She wasn't constantly concerned about whether I thought she did something right, because that's not where it's at. I don't care if your negatives are one stop off. They're printable. What I care about is that you're really getting into, when I hold a camera or film camera or video, I'm doing whatever, I am the camera. There's no place I can't go to get the shot that I need to create the composition that's in my mind. You must please yourself doing this work. Sometimes you need to go up into the roof and shoot down. Sometimes you need to be on the ground shooting upside down at your subject. I mean, you gotta play. You can't, and there are no limits. You just have to, you have to find what feels right for you. And then you'll get really good at it. And then when you get really good at it, hopefully you'll be bored and want to do something different.
And not only are there no limits, there are also no rules. There's a marketplace out there that tells us this is beautiful, this is not beautiful, but beauty is in here and here. So define it for yourself.
Yeah, don't let TikTok and Snapchat and all these, don't let them determine what is good art. It's up to you. So don't let social media direct you in a different path.
You're concerned about one like.
Yep.
All right, now as like, educators or people working in the art field, what is something that you're excited about seeing that your students are doing or that you see coming into prominence? Like what gets you excited about the next generation of artists that are coming up?
Their access, my God. I mean, if YouTube was around in the 70s or 80s, I mean,
Right.
my God, my kids ask me questions all the time. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, Google, why are you asking me this? Everything. There are no more Encyclopedia Britannicas. Nobody's doing that. It's all on this flat screen. Oh my God, I can cross the planet in seconds. You have no idea just these gifts that technology has given you. It wields a tremendous amount of power, and your access to information is unprecedented in the history of the world. You should be taking advantage of it and going to places far away. I read books for this. That was me as a kid. I read books to leave Harlem and be
But still read books.
Country. Right. But now you literally can like press a button and speak to your friend in Greece or something like that. I think I lost track of the question, but you have amazing access. And this is yeah.
I think this little box through which we're communicating right now is a great source of knowledge. But of course, the thing we're trying to glean over our life's journeys is wisdom, and to then share it. And that's when you need to get out there and create and engage. I think what really struck me when I looked at this year's pool of photographs, and it certainly wasn't everyone, otherwise everybody would be getting a key, was to know that, for lack of a cliche, this harkens back to a rock and roll song from the 60s, but to know that the kids are all right. Because it's a tough environment out there. And this young generation is saddled with a lot of challenges of which I had no knowledge when I was growing up. And they're only getting more and more dire. So we need you, young artists, to become you, mature artists, and put your voices out there to say, hey, this needs attention. This needs solving. This needs some love. This needs some healing. And there were a number of pieces that said just that. And that was a thrill for me. That was a relief for me, because the TV, the newspaper, the internet doesn't always say these things, but you said it in your work that I saw earlier this year. And for that, I'm so very grateful.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. I'll make this a slightly selfish one because I'm curious. What is like an artist that you all would recommend teens or us check out that's interesting to you right now, like a working one, a photographer, a painter, a director of films, a writer?
Andrew Dosimo. This guy, known him 30 years, gave me my start. Director, filmmaker, photographer, stylist, writer. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of stuck on the classics. I don't know. Go look at Richard Avedon. I got to meet him one year. That was quite impressive. Get lost in bookstores. Get lost in bookstores. Go to every museum you can. Just keep looking. Search, 10 greatest African photographers. History of photography in Europe from 1898 to 1920. I don't know. Whatever excites you, go find it out. There are so many people who have done great things. One of the things I've done at least at my school, is because I can't always take the kids out the way I want, is I've created a document, and this document is at least 54 pages long, and it's just every photographer I can think of in my head, and there's like 2 pictures, their name, a blurb, and a hyperlink. So the kids who make proposals about work, before you can propose doing something, you should at least know what's out there. And usually kids resonate with something on that document. And generally the thing that they click on is the thing that they want to do. So I try to bring the gallery museum to them and the artist to them, and a history of that person, you know, so they have a sense of what their work was about.
I'm thinking not of a photographer, but of the painter Kahinda Wiley.
Oh, yeah.
As we're speaking, of course, with younger people right now, I found it so very helpful and ultimately vital to learn to walk before you run. So what that means for me, of course, is having studied the great photographers in whose shoes I dream of walking and maybe one day running. And the speed of our pace never ends. But if we know what it is we love in this world of art, and we want to dive deeper in that love, well, let's find out who practiced that love before. What did that artist do? Wow, that's so fascinating. I see myself in that work. Everyone's been on Earth long enough to have seen something that really strikes them. Who made that piece? What's the story behind that? Oh, wow, that ties to my story. This is so exciting. Wow. And these other people I suddenly learned also told this kind of story. I know my tribe now, and I'm going to build it over time. And I'm going to grow in my voice as a member of that tribe as I move forward in my art. But the idea behind recommending Kahinda Wiley is he's someone whose work absolutely touches now. He's speaking to the culture of now. And yet the subjects of his beautiful, beautiful paintings are all borrowed from centuries before. And to see those echoes of the past turned into the vibrant voices of the now, isn't that what it's all about?
I'd have to say my first love was always architecture, and I've always loved all the stuff Frank Lloyd Wright. I mean, his out of the box thing, his cantilever houses, it just blows my mind. And I like when, you know, judging, seeing these students that think outside the box, not staying in the lane. Be crazy, go outside, experiment. And do lots of research. Like Tyrone said, the internet is in your hands. You can tour every museum in the world, do the virtual tours, check everything out. There's a lot out there to learn.
Connor, are we finished with questions?
I think so.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much to our esteemed panelists. Before we, any last words before we share next steps with the teens and educators who tuned in?
Very, very quickly. One of my mentors photographed the jazz musician Miles Davis. And at the end of the session, he said, do you have any advice for people who ask about you given all the success in your art? And he said, whatever it is you do, be patient with yourself, because sometimes it takes a lifetime to learn to play like yourself. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Connor, I'm going to ask for your assist in the background as I close out. So thank you again to Autumn, to Beowulf and Tyrone for joining us this evening. If you've joined, you might be interested in, curious about, nervous about submitting work to the 2024 Scholastic Awards. Deadlines are approaching, so the first step is to create your account, but also understand when your deadline is and avoid waiting until the last minute. You're going to need to upload your work to complete your entry. And if you have questions, please note that we are virtual in the complete sense. So if you want to ask a question, you can submit it through the contact form on our website. But leaving voicemails on the info line that unfortunately is still public will not be useful, because that's not monitored, being monitored at the time. Currently. So that's that. And then I am going to copy and paste some information into the chat that I hope is useful. Oh, sorry guys, I'm having some technical difficulties. Connor or Fiona or Eleni, I'm not sure if you might be able to copy the resources into the chat. But anyhow, thank you so much. I saw a question as to the video. The recording will be made available in the coming days if you would like to revisit these wonderful pearls of wisdom from our panelists. So thank you so much again. I hope you enjoyed this evening's session. And if you're a teen, I hope you feel inspired to submit your best work to the 2024 Scholastic Awards. And I'm wishing you the best of success. Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.